Chapter 51. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 51 Teasing words and a goodnight kiss. I think you might have a fever. Ace said. No dumb. I felt my face turning beet red when I felt the gentleness of his palm against my forehead. Ace's face was directly in front of mine as he stared into my eyes with concern. He placed his other hand on his forehead as if to compare our temperature. My heart had started beating much faster than before, and the sound of my thundering heartbeat felt deafening to my own ears. My heart was beating so fast and loud that I was scared that Ace would hear it. I'm okay. I don't feel sick at all, I said as I tried to remove his hand from my forehead. He's too close and he's touching me. I felt even more blood rush to my face and my head started to feel dizzy. Ace's hazel eyes stared closely at my face. When will the light turn green? Let me know if you're sick. I can drive you to the hospital, Ace said before he retreated back to his seat. That was so not good for my poor heart. Okay, I murmured in reply. Thankfully, we arrived at my apartment building without further incidents. Ace parked his car right in front of the building. Thank you for driving me. I thanked him politely. I wanted to add that there was no need for him to do this next time, but I knew that he wouldn't listen to my objections anyways. No problem at all. I'm happy to drive you, he replied with a cheerful smile. It was amazing how he seemed to have so much energy after such a long day. Ace didn't seem tired, and he didn't seem stressed out at all. Perhaps for him, working like this was normal. I returned his smile before getting out of the car. To my surprise, when I got out of the car, Ace also got out with me. I'll walk you, he offered like it was supposed to be the norm. He's going to walk me to my room. I mumbled as I thought of a polite way to get him back in his car. Let's go, Ace said as he placed his large hand at the small of my back and began pushing me forward. I found myself being swept up with the flow, and once again, I was doing everything that Ace wanted me to do. Confused and without a better idea of what I should do, I ended up walking with Ace all the way to the door of my room. I should go inside now, I said softly as if to remind myself that I should quickly retreat to the safety of my own room. Do you live alone? Ace asked casually. Yes, I replied honestly. Back when Kyle and I were still together, he would come over sometimes to spend the night, but we never got anywhere close to moving in together. Now that I think of it, Kyle would only come over after our dates or after work to have sex and sleep over on some nights during the weekdays. It was rare for him to come over during weekends. He cited his family for his reasons, but based on my new discovery, he probably had other reasons as well. Ace is going to be so shocked when he sees the state of my apartment. Although I made more money now than when I first started working, I never moved out of the same apartment that Kyle had helped me pick out. The place was just convenient, and I had gotten used to living there. Plus, the landlady was nice and helpful to me. Most importantly, I hated packing and moving the most. It was just too much of a pain. For all of those reasons or valid excuses, I never moved out to get a nicer or larger apartment. Wait. What am I thinking? That it's not like I'm going to invite him inside, and it's also not like he's going to force himself in either, right? I know that it's already quite late, but you should go to sleep as early as you can. The schedule is very packed tomorrow, in case you haven't realized, Ace said with a slight warning before he grinned at me. I guess you're busy every day, I replied while feeling a little shy. I don't mind. Work is fun. And it's more fun now that you're with me, Ace said with a smile before winking at me. My eyes widened in amazement when Ace admitted that he enjoyed his work. Just like before, I could feel his determination and commitment to his work. I stared at his face in admiration before he stared back at me. Oh, I murmured, stunned at his words and his overly attractive face. Good night, Ace said before turning to leave. Although I was partly relieved that he was finally leaving, a small part of me felt a little depressed and a tightness pulled at my chest. It was a feeling that I couldn't quite understand. Good. I started to say goodnight, but I never got to completely the word. I felt the hardness of the door to my room against my back as he backed me into it with his large frame, trapping me between him and the door. His lips were on mine as his hand cupped the side of my face. His heated kiss swallowed all the words that I wanted to say as his soft lips began seducing mine. Stunned by the suddenness of his pleasurable attack, my body froze in place as his lips continued to explore mine. The tip of his wet tongue probed my lips, seeking for entry into the depths of my mouth. I found myself moaning softly into his seductive kiss as my lips slowly parted to welcome the invasion of his exploring tongue. Ace thrusted his tongue firmly into my mouth as he groaned softly into our kiss. His tongue found mine immediately and began grinding against it. His fingers slipped from my cheek down to hold my chin to angle my face where he wanted it as he changed the angle of our kiss to kiss me even deeper than before. To be continued. Chapter 52. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 52. If he got serious, his tongue swirled in my mouth as he seemed to explore every nook and cranny. I could taste him and a bit of the wine that we had at dinner. It was such a sweet taste that I couldn't get enough of. My tongue moved against his fervently as I started moaning louder. I kissed him back as I felt the heat of my own desire flooding and clouding my mind. Ace is such a skillful kisser. His kisses felt so satisfying and so blissful. His hand slipped in between us and began caressing the side of my waist before he sucked on my lower lip. Ace. I called his name to stop him, but my voice came out in a small breathless whimper as I panted. Don't say my name like that. You're such a mean girl. Ace said mockingly, but he did back away a little to give me some room. Is he holding back for my sake? This is a strange condition that you have. When I kiss you and touch you, your face gets redder and hotter. Ace said teasingly as he reached a hand towards my face. He tranced 2 fingers along my cheek, and I felt even more heat rush to my face at his touch. My face felt like it was on fire, and I knew that my face was red. Don't play around me with. I whispered as I averted my eyes from his. Then you wouldn't mind if I got serious about you, right? Ace asked, but I felt like it wasn't truly a question. What does he even mean by that? Get serious with me. What would I do if he got serious? With that he placed his large hand on top of my head and patted it softly a few times as he smiled down at me. He's so tall and his smile is so captivating. How can someone like him really be interested in me? The answer was simple. He probably wasn't interested, and he was just toying with me at his own convenience. You should head back, I said curtly as I looked away and pressed my back harder against the door to my room. I'll see you tomorrow at work, Ace said passively. Then he was gone. I watched his back as he walked away before I closed my eyes and let out a sigh. Why do I have a feeling that dealing with him would be more difficult than any challenges that I may have to face at work? After entering my room, I leaned my back against the closed door as I closed my eyes and concentrated on steadying my breathing and my rapid heart rate. I knew that I needed to keep my distance from him, but in the end, we still ended up kissing. The heat of his lips on mine, the taste of his tongue inside my mouth, and the warmth of his hand on my body, I could still feel all of those sensations even though he was no longer here. I should have known that of all the transportation options that I had at my disposal, a ride alone with Ace in his car must have been the most dangerous option. After calming myself, I sat myself down onto the sofa to rest a little before I took a shower. My eyes scanned the small room of my apartment before focusing on a few items that belonged to Kyle. Since I had been busy and too emotionally devastated since he dumped me, I haven't gotten around to sorting and dealing with the various things that Kyle left behind in my room. Even though, I knew that it would serve him right if I just threw everything out, I couldn't help but think that he may need some of the things that he left in my room. Arg. Why am I still being so nice to him after all of the cruel things that he did to me? He might never contact me again and he might never come to pick up his things, but it still felt wrong for me to simply throw all his stuff away. I got up from the sofa and wandered around only to find that there were a lot of Kyle's belongings in my room. Everything from daily essentials to clothes and electronic gadgets. All of them strewn around the room in random places. Over the 2 years that we've been together, I guess I shouldn't be too surprised that his stuff in my room had accumulated. With a silent sigh, I took out a large cardboard box and began placing some of Kyle's things into the box, starting with random things that I could find. It's going to take time to completely find and stuff all his things into the box, but better to start now than later. I took a marker and wrote his name in large bold text on the box. Picking up each item made me think of Kyle and the associated memory that we had with that item. Even though I knew that it wasn't the object's fault, I began hating each object that I picked up. After placing a couple of things in the box, I was too emotionally exhausted to continue. I bit on my lower lip to keep my tears from spilling over. It hasn't been that long since we broke up and my wounds were still quite fresh that a little stimulation left it bleeding all over again. I shoved the box in a corner and decided to leave it at this for tonight. Tomorrow is going to be a better day, Karina. I woke up on Saturday morning feeling very empty inside. The first few days working as ACE secretary passed by smoothly and I had been assigned the task of preparing reports to summarize on the topics related to the dog meat trade. The purpose was for me to share in next week's meeting more information about the topic so that the entire team would have a better understanding before proceeding to work on their respective parts. I was so invested in the project that I planned to work the weekend on the research as well. To be continued. Chapter 53. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 53. In for a surprise that was the main objective, but the hidden agenda that I tried to keep suppressed and hidden away in the corner of my mind was because I needed something to keep my mind off the fact that Kyle is supposed to be getting married today. Of course, I wasn't invited to his wedding, and I had no idea where he was getting married. Not that it mattered, I wouldn't turn up anyways even if he did invite me. We were not supposed to have a close relationship at all in the eyes of others who knew us. That was the curse of our forbidden and secret relationship. In an attempt to avoid thinking of that any further, I focused on my research as I sat in front of my laptop and typed away. Collecting information about what the dog meat trade was and how it worked wasn't difficult. What was more challenging was looking into the various viewpoints that people had regarding the controversial topic. Of course, people in the West were clearly opposed to it because dogs were considered a man's best friend. The idea of consuming dogs as food was just unthinkable to many people, and I had to say that that applied to me also. To me, dogs were pets to be taken care of and loved. Dog wasn't food for me. However, there were still many people who did not share this belief, which is probably why the trade still exists to this day in many countries around the world. There are many cultures where dogs are considered as a normal source of meat for consumption, similar to pigs, chickens, and cows. Similar to how there are chicken and other livestock farms, there are farms that raise dogs for meat. However, the conditions of those farms and some shady activities associated to the sources of the dogs still exists. After more reading, I became genuinely interested in the topic, and I could see even clearer why many people and foundations are working to put a stop to this meat trade. That doesn't mean that the line was simple to draw, and the topic was definitely a wild mix of various shades of gray rather than just black and white. So how are we supposed to get people to support ending this trade? I paused to stretch my arms above my head before leaning my head back on the headrest of my seat. My eyes stared up blankly at the white ceiling of my room. Kyle is probably getting married in some church right now. I closed my eyes to rest them. Staring at the computer for a few hours was starting to take a toll on my eyes already. When I closed my eyes, my mind automatically conjured up a beautiful and romantic scene of Kyle exchanging marriage vow with a beautiful woman that I have never seen before. They both smiled at each other before leaning in for a kiss. Kyle wore a formal white tuxedo that perfectly complemented the white dress worn by his happy bride. They looked so happy and so well suited to each other. Ring ring ring, huh? My eyes snapped open, and that image was gone when the sound of my phone ringing brought me back quickly to reality. Who could it be? Maybe it's Mum. She might be wondering if I'm going back home to see her this weekend. My hand grabbed my phone and connected the line without bothering to check who was the caller. It was probably my mum or some telesale spam because there was on one else now that I have broken up with Kyle. Hello. I said lazily. Sorry to call you on a weekend, but that I sort of need your help right now, a man's voice said in a seductive drawl. Ace. My eyes widened in shock as a hand flew to cover my open mouth. I removed my phone from my ear and checked the caller ID. It really is Ace. He needs help. It's not a problem. What do you need help with? I asked in a panic, sensing that it was urgent. Did something happen to him or something? I stood up from my seat in a panic as I gripped my phone tighter in my hand. Where are you right now? Ace asked through the phone. I'm at my place. I replied. That's great. Perfect timing. Can you come out to your balcony for a bit? Ace asked and I could feel his relief. Sure. But why? I asked in slight confusion as I slowly approached the exit to my balcony. Do I need to be on the balcony to help him with whatever he needed help with? I stepped out onto the balcony of my room while still confused with what Ace really wanted. He seemed troubled and whatever problem he was encountering must be quite serious for him to call me on a Saturday like this. He must have felt guilty for it too because he did apologize first thing in our call. Rena. That can't be. Ace. I gasped in surprise when I looked down from my balcony towards the front of the building. What is Ace doing here? Ace was standing there in front of yet another eye-catching sports car as he waved a hand at me. He seemed perfectly fine, and he was even smiling so. Why are you here? I asked through the phone as I took a step by from the balcony railing. I already told you. I need your help, he replied casually. What do you need help with? I asked, suspiciously. Why don't you come and meet me down here first? Or are you still in your pajamas? Ace asked teasingly. No, I wasn't in my pajamas, but that didn't mean that I was in my office clothes either. I was in a simple t-shirt and jeans because it was a Saturday. Ace wasn't in his suit either, and I guess this might be the first time that I saw him in casual clothes in real life. The loose white shirt that he had on along with his light blue jeans complemented his tan skin quite well. I'm okay, I mumbled, too confused that I didn't quite know what to react. To be continued. Chapter 54. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 54. Sweet for the heart. The line clicked dead, and that was when reality sank in that Ace was standing right in front of my building and I'm supposed to go see him. Oh, my goodness. Where is my lipstick? Before I realized how illogical and crazy my actions were, I was already in front of the mirror in the entryway of my room with a lipstick in my hand. Why did I have to look so pale today of all days? Because I had planned to stay in all day. I didn't have a trace of makeup on, and with the many things that had happened over the course of a few days, my skin didn't retain any of its usual healthy glow. I applied some pink tone lipstick to my lips before reaching for my blush powder. I don't have time for this. Ace is waiting downstairs. After checking that I no longer looked like a corpse, I headed out of my room and down to where Ace was waiting. I cursed myself silently at how much I cared about what he thought about appearance. It's supposed to be normal for me to want to look at least presentable in front of my boss, right? Ace. Sorry for the wait, I said. Great, I had gotten used to calling him Ace already. I'm such a well-disciplined little lady. No worries, Ace replied with a relaxed smile as he approached me. What can I help you with? I asked with worry as I looked up at his face. Oh, that. You see that I accidentally ended up buying too many donuts, so I thought that you could help me eat some. Ace said as he thrusted a large box of donuts my way. My eyes glanced down at the colorful and very large box of donuts in his hands. How can someone make a mistake of buying this many? What? I said in disbelief. Ace smiled at me innocently like he couldn't understand why I was looking so confused. I'm on a diet. Sorry that I can't help you out with this. Have a good weekend, I said before smiling tightly at him. Enough with the jokes already. I wasn't in the best of moods. I had a lot of work to do to prove myself to the superstar colleagues on my new team. Today was a Saturday and Kyle is getting married to the woman of his dreams right now while I'm standing here with barely any makeup on because my boss mistakenly bought too many donuts and decided to turn up to my place so that I could help him eat it. What is wrong with my life right now? I shook my head at the ridiculousness of everything that had happened to me over the past week before I turned on my heels and started heading back into the building. Wait, Rena. Ace called after me. Please just go home. I said, sounding tired and depressed. Ace seemed surprised at my sudden change in mood, but that didn't make him back down at all. You're working now, right? I have some work to do on the project too. Want to work on it together, he suggested brightly. What are we now? Study buddies. How did you know that I was working? I asked, curiously. It was a guess, but I wouldn't be surprised if someone as hardworking as you would work the weekends at a project this big, Ace said with a smile. You should go home. I can work just fine by myself, and you shouldn't have said that you needed help. I was honestly worried. I mumbled my complaints. I wasn't lying. I really do need your help. If you let me help you with your work, you'll end up helping me because it's my project, right? Ace said as he tried to convince me. The work will turn out fine so you can head back, I said, standing my ground. My room is small and although it wasn't in a messy state, I didn't feel like inviting Ace in no matter what he says. I had made up my mind and my decision was firm. Or so I thought. Ace looked down at me with sorrowful expression as his eyes pleaded with me. What kind of trick is this? Ace. I whispered his name as he continued to stare at me with those hazel puppy eyes. After a while, Ace began laughing softly to himself while I didn't quite understand what he was laughing about. He did seem really relieved about something, though. You look quite fine now, Ace said before he reached out and stroked my hair. I'm fine, I reaffirmed, although I didn't know what he was talking about. Was it because I looked unwell before? This is for you. They say sweet stuff helps. Ace said as he thrusted the large box of donuts into my hands. After flashing me one of his super attractive smiles, Ace turned to leave, which just left me even more confused than before. Sweet stuff helps with what? Are you leaving now? I asked before I wanted to kick myself for sounding so disappointed. Unless you would like me to stay. Ace said teasingly. No, I'll see you at the office on Monday. Don't worry about the work, I'll get it done on time for sure, I replied with some confidence. Glad to hear that, Ace said before he turned to leave. I watched as Ace nimbly got into this sports car and then drove off. My eyes stared down at the large box of donuts in my hand before quickly realizing that I could never finish it off myself. Since I just got dumped, getting back into shape by going on a diet and working out was what I should do. I also had to try to stay healthy, so I don't get sick. There was so much to be done at work that it would be bad if I had to miss days at work. I cocked my head to the side in wonder. Now, what was that all about? To be continued. Chapter 55. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 55. Harsh gossip and moving on. Maybe it was because of Ace's unexpected visit to my apartment that made me forget all about Kyle and his wedding that weekend. After Ace left, I ended up chewing on one of the donuts that he bought while continuing with my research on the topic of dog meat trade. By the end of the day, I had compiled a very good list of resources regarding the facts about the trade as well as many angles of the public's opinion of it. Although I wasn't sure if Ace did that intentionally or not, but his visit did provide enough distraction for me to stop thinking about Kyle and his betrayal. After spending the whole of Sunday submerging myself in my research, I had completely come to terms with Kyle moving on and realized that I should be doing the same. Kyle probably didn't need my well wishes, but I decided to wish him the best with his new phase in life with his wife. That night I slept deeply and without dreams as I prepared myself for some grueling work on Monday. Kyle had clearly moved on, and although I haven't made any real progress in my love life, I was determined to get a move on with my professional career. I'm going to show everyone what I can do on this project. Monday arrived, and soon after I stepped into the lobby of the office building, I quickly found that Ace's unintentional efforts in diverting my attention from Kyle's wedding didn't truly work. Despite the many great things that I admired about this company, there were some cultural things that truly got on my nerves. One of those things was the exceptional talent of many employees of this company in gossiping about everything, especially their colleagues. You know that Kyle from planning got married the past weekend, right? Of course. I stalked all social media channels just to get a glimpse at some photos from his wedding. I heard his bride is a real beauty. I bet her family is rich. Kyle's family is well off too. They're probably a match made in heaven. Look at this photo here. I got my friend from the planning department to send it over. He was there at the wedding. I never realized until we broke up that Kyle was such a celebrity figure in our office. Perhaps, I did realize it, but I just ignored it while thinking that it was nothing but a burden to our secret relationship. The more that people paid attention to Kyle and the more that they swarmed around him, the more we had to be careful to keep our relationship hidden. I sighed and closed my eyes momentarily to calm my muddled mind. There's nothing for you to hide anymore, Karina. Well, perhaps the fact that you had a one-night stand with the devil CEO. Just imagine if that were to get out. I stepped into the elevator while I prayed that I wouldn't run into Kyle. One of these days, I'm going to be completely fine about running into him and facing him. However, that day wasn't going to be today. I moved deeper inside the elevator as more people came in while trying to make myself as small as possible. Despite my efforts to keep Kyle and his wedding off my mind, I kept on thinking of the reason why he had to lie to me. How much of our relationship was a lie? Was everything simply just a lie? All those times when he was kind to me. All those times that he supported me when I was going through a hard time, whether in life or at work. Was everything just lies? When he held me and told me that he loved me. Was that just a convenient lie that he told just so that he could use me and sleep with me? He's so popular, though. Wouldn't it be easier for him to grab one-night stand lovers with the other girls? Just like always, by the time that the elevator arrived at the CEO's floor, I was the only one left standing all alone and extremely confused in the elevator. The sound of the elevator's arrival and the doors sliding open snapped me out of my dark thoughts along with a sting of a headache. Enough of this, Karina. There's so much work for you to do, and you're going to have to do extremely well to earn and keep your place on this team of crazy genius A-listers. Start. A said dispassionately from his seat at the head of the meeting table. This is it. I stood in front of the large projector screen with everyone's eyes on me as I was about to deliver my first ever presentation as a member of the CEO's office. After wrecking my brain and sacrificing sleep over the weekend, my presentation was ready. Hopefully. Hello everyone. In my presentation, I will provide some contextual information on the dog meat trade as well as highlight some common public opinions of the trade. First of all, what exactly is the dog meat trade and how does it work? I began my presentation while trying my best to keep my voice from shaking from my nervousness. O.org. I haven't worked for that long, but over the years that I've been at Jess's and Hill's, I've had the opportunity to present in various business meetings and also in front of clients. However, the tension and pressure of this meeting was on an entirely different level altogether, and it was just an internal meeting without external stakeholders involved. I didn't dare think of how stressful this project would be at the pitching stage and when the clients got involved. My past experiences and learning saved me, and I was somehow able to push to the end of my presentation while maintaining the attention and focus of my audiences. I thanked Lauren and her training and guidance silently in my head when my presentation came to a close. There was a brief moment of silence as everyone seemed to absorb in the information. Suddenly, a hand shot up into the air. To be continued. Chapter 56. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 56. Complete disaster. Jeremy had his hand in the air and a small smile on his lips. I don't know why, but I felt slightly relieved that it was Jeremy who had his hand up. He seemed kind and still young, so perhaps I thought that he would go easy on me. Yes, I said to welcome his question. I think your presentation overall isn't bad, but it's not very useful, especially for me on the creative side. I understand the various public opinions as you factually presented it, but there seems to be no information on the implications of those opinions or the degree of how strong each belief is, which just makes it hard for us to figure out which opinion we should be catering to in our advertisement. Jeremy stated with a slight frown between his brows. Frankly, I was shocked by his words. He just told me that my presentation wasn't really useful to him, and it made me wonder if the other people thought the same. Did I just waste my time on this and also waste everyone's time? I understand. Let me do more research and add that part in, I quickly said. Thanks. That would be very helpful, Jeremy said before returning his attention to his laptop screen. At least, I had to appreciate the fact that he was being honest with his opinion of my work. I should take it as an opportunity for me to learn and improve myself even further. There's not enough math and statistics in there, which is also probably what Jeremy was getting at as well. Not that I expected someone from design to shove in some numbers into their presentation. We'll deal with that on our side to get a better view of the problem quantitatively. Is that fine with you, Mr. Hill? Richard spoke up emotionlessly. Did he just say, someone from design? Sure, at the design department we rarely deal with large data sets, and we don't delve into complicated modeling of numbers to form scenarios, but that doesn't mean that we don't look at numbers at all. When we try to understand the market or the problem to assist with our design decisions, we do research and look at statistics too. I plastered a professional smile on my face as I tried to tell myself that it was my fault for not adding in the elements that Richard mentioned, and that he probably didn't mean it as a disrespectful personal attack against me or the design department. Agreed. Anyone else have any questions? Ace asked curtly. His hazel eyes felt cold and extremely frightening as he looked around the room before his eyes rested on me. I recalled how he smiled and looked at me when he turned up in front of my apartment building on the weekend with a large box of donuts that he had mistakenly bought, and I just couldn't believe that that man was the same one as the one staring at me right now. I have a question. From the various public opinions that you've presented about, which one do you think we should consider using for our project? Ace asked as his eyes seemed to pierce me. That is a very good question, and one that I didn't have an answer to. What am I supposed to say to that? The opinions were very different and very split on this very controversial topic. Personally, I didn't know what I believed, and I wasn't sure which angle would be more interesting or appealing for the advertisement. I'm not that so sure. I replied softly. I could feel everyone's eyes on me as they looked at me with a mix of surprise and then disappointment. Ace on the other hand showed no emotions at all as he continued to stare at me. His attitude felt so cold. You haven't thought about it, or do you normally don't think when you work? Ace asked monotonously. My mouth dropped open in shock at his words as my body froze in place. I bit on my lower lip hard as my frustration and embarrassment started taking over. What did he just say? Did he just accuse me of not using my brain? I'm sorry, sir. I will think about it, I managed to say after recovering from my shock. Next. Ace said with a dismissal wave of his hand. Richard got up from his seat to present his part of the project. With a cold glare from Richard, I returned to my seat at the table. The rest of the meeting felt like a blur to me as I sat there while feeling completely out of place. Sir, you have a meeting with the head of the planning and the head of the accounting department now, I informed Ace softly after the meeting had ended. The meeting for Project Alpha turned out to be a disaster for me. I would be lying if I said that I didn't feel defeated and very lost inside as I plastered on a professional smile to inform Ace of his next meeting for the day. On top of trying to play a role in Project Alpha, I also needed to work at Ace's personal secretary. Ace stopped in the hallway before he turned to face me. He still looked as stern and serious as he did during the meeting, and it made me feel uneasy to be alone with him. "You don't have to follow me around today. Please concentrate on improving the quality of your work based on the feedback that you received from the meeting. Come to my office at the end of the day and I'll help to review your progress," Ace said flatly before he turned and walked away. "Yes, sir," I whispered after him, although he probably didn't hear me. I headed to my work desk in the CEO's office where the other team members were already hard at work. No one paid me any attention, and I thought that that was for the best. Everyone paid attention to their work and was undoubtedly producing some amazing results. I sat down in my chair at my desk before pulling up my presentation deck on my laptop screen. To be continued. Chapter 57. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 57. The CEO's favorite. I don't particularly care if the CEO favors her or not as long as she can do her job properly. Richard's loud voice sounded in the office. "SHH. Don't be so loud. She's going to hear you," another member of the team hissed. "Noel.n. What? I'm saying thing as it is. What is the problem? I don't care about any rumors. If her work is good enough to meet the team standards, then it doesn't matter what kind of relationship she has with the boss," Richard said as loudly as before. "Rumors are just rumors. Now stop it, both of you," Juliana snapped loudly. "There are rumors." The three of them turned to look awkwardly around the room before their eyes rested on me. Then, as if they had seen a ghost, they quickly looked away before pretending that nothing ever happened. "I see, so they were talking about me. Who else could it be? I'm probably the only one whose work doesn't yet meet the standard of this A.list team." Although what they said was technically true, it still hurt me to hear it said like that. The implication that they thought that I got to join this team because the CEO favors me was also clear. I didn't have to ask for more details on what they meant by the CEO's favor. My fingers continued typing at the keyboard, but my mind was far from focused on the work in front of me. I knew that a day like this would come, however, I never thought that it would come so soon. Anticipating this, I even told Ace before that I didn't want to take this role because I didn't want to sleep my way up. I don't think Ace has ever shown any action that would make people think that he favors me apart from appointing me to be his secretary. It's normal for the CEO and senior managers to have a secretary, so I didn't see anything wrong with that. I can't concentrate and I'm supposed to fix this before the end of the day so that I would have something that was at least passable to show Ace. I licked my dry lips as the tension in the room started to get to me. The sound of the other people typing on their keyboard, the sounds of people talking to each other in hushed whispers, the sound of someone stirring tea in their cup with a small metal spoon. Everything felt so loud, and it was driving me crazy. Suddenly, I shot up from my seat and people turned to look my way at the loud sound that I had made. It was probably my own imagination, but I had never felt this alienated before. "Excuse me," I whispered before quickly walking out of the room. "I told you to keep it down," someone hissed behind my back. "It's not my fault. If she can't take it, she can just leave," someone else replied. I thought that it must have been Richard. "We already have someone to do design anyways," a woman spoke up without a care. "Dating between employees is strictly forbidden," another voice stated while sounding very bored. "Stop it. The CEO isn't dating her. Why would he date her of all people?" another woman snapped, clearly annoyed. I made my way away from the door before I would pick up more of what they were saying about me. If that was their idea of whispering, then I had to say that we had very different understanding of the meaning of the word. Thinking that drinking something sweet could help with my depressed feelings, I headed for the vending machine. After buying a can of drink, I stood in front of the machine in a daze. I had no idea how long I stood there for. It was like everything had gone blank and I felt very empty inside. The sound of people talking made me realize that someone was coming this way, and that meant that this resting area wouldn't be so private anymore. With a resigned sigh, I left the break area and headed where I thought that I could be alone. This place didn't hold any dear memories for me at all, but regardless of that I had somehow ended up here. I looked at the view of the city from high up on the rooftop opening of the building. The last time I was here, I walked up those stairs thinking that I had a loving boyfriend, a perfect relationship, and the prospect of getting married in the near future. A short while later, I walked down the same flight of stairs as a single and heartbroken woman with her entire career at risk. I tipped the can back and felt the sweetness of the drink fill my mouth. It was windy and my hair flapped wildly around my face. Surprisingly, this place helped me to calm down and I could be alone. The view was amazing too. I closed my eyes for a moment as I took in deep breaths. Enjoying yourself? I jumped and almost screamed in shock at the sound of someone speaking very close to me. Why are you here? My eyes widened when I turned to see Ace just standing there casually. He looked at me and began stretching as I stared back at him in pure shock. When did he get here? Why is he here? Ace. Why are you here? I asked in surprise. Ace looked like he had just woken up. Oh, please don't tell me. Wait. I said as I tried to wrap my head around what was going on. He's not supposed to be here. I know that he's not supposed to be here. I took out my phone and opened Ace's calendar that was synced to my phone. If I'm not wrong, which I didn't think that I was, Ace is supposed to be in a meeting right now. So, why is he here? You're supposed to be in a meeting right now. I exclaimed in shock as I pointed to the meeting slot on my phone screen and showed it to him. To be continued. Chapter 58. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 58. Sweet punishment. Ace didn't even take a glance at it, and it was as if he already knew what I was talking about. You're skipping out on the meeting. Why? You're 15 minutes late, but please go now. It's better than not turning up at all. I urged him loudly as I reached out for his arm and began pulling on it. I'm not going. Don't you have work to do? Leave me alone. Ace said gruffly. What were you doing here? I asked to confirm my suspicion. I was taking a nap. Ace confessed without any sign of guilt. The devil's CEO was skipping out on his meetings and napping here. What am I dealing with? You can't just take a nap here. I snapped. Why is he taking a nap here of all places? Come to think of it, when I met him here on the day that Kyle broke up with me, Ace was also taking a nap here. Never mind me. Why are you here? I'm sure that you have work to do, or did you manage to finish that presentation already? Ace asked as he arched a brow at me. Well. I murmured while trying to avoid his inquisitive gaze. Ace gave me a look that told me that he knew that something was wrong. I bit my lower lip as I feared that he would ask me about it. Do you remember what I told you the last time that you came here? Ace asked as his eyes narrowed slightly at me. What he said. Don't come up here ever again. This is my space. If you do, you might have to pay with something more than a kiss next time. Oh no. Why didn't I remember his warning until just now? Wait. I cried out, but it was too late. I gasped when I felt Ace's grip on my wrist before he pulled me against him. His hazel eyes looked down at me with unmistakable desire. I've seen that look in his eyes before when he touched and kissed me in his office. The flames of desire burning in the depth of his eyes was unmistakable. Ace. I whimpered his name. His arm snaked around my waist, pulling me even closer to him. As if that was even possible, my body was already pressed up tightly against his and I could feel his body heat on mine. I knew that I should apologize for invading his space, but my lips wouldn't move, and I couldn't make a sound. Should I show you my nap room? Ace proposed cheerfully. Ah. Ace. I let out a yelp when he suddenly lifted me up into his arms with ease. I wasn't that light, but the way he carried me made me feel like I was weightless. After recovering from the shock of him suddenly lifting me up into his arms, it struck me that he mentioned something about his nap room. What was that? My body tensed in his arms when I thought that I wasn't sure if I wanted to find out. Ace strode with firm steps leading us away from the railing of the rooftop. There's a room here, I said in surprise. To the side of the rooftop was a wall, and after rounding the corner of that wall there was a door. I never knew that there was a room here, but then again, this was my second time up here on the rooftop. Apparently, this was Ace's favorite spot and he seemed to come here often for his naps. When I don't want to work, I come and hide here, Ace confessed without any guilt. I looked up at his face in surprise. Frankly, I was shocked. What he was telling me and what I was seeing absolutely did not match with his image of being the devil CEO at all. What kind of CEO hides away from his work here? Ace opened the door and carried me into the room before closing and locking the door behind us. The room was small, and I figured that it must have been designed to be a storage room. Based on what I saw inside the room, it was clear that the room had been transformed from a storage room into Ace's nap room for real. There was a small table and a chair in the room along with a long sofa with a pillow on it. Ace laid me down on the sofa and I was suddenly enveloped by his smell. I took in a deep breath and the smell of Ace's perfume filled my senses. Ace definitely took his nap here on his sofa because it smelled so much of him. I had no idea why I was thinking of that rather than focusing on the fact that Ace had gotten on top of me. Ace. I whispered his name as I felt his body weight on me. Ace looked down at me like he was eyeing his prey from above as he straddled my hips. He's going to eat me. You've gotten quite good at calling my name, Ace complimented me with a satisfied grin. I let out a cry when he leaned down and buried his face in the side of my neck. His warm breath tickled the sensitive skin on the side of my neck before he kissed me there. His lips trailed soft kisses along my tender skin while I moaned and arched my neck to the side. I knew that we shouldn't be doing this, but his seductive kisses felt so good. His kisses became bolder before his lips started sucking on my neck. The sound of him sucking my neck filled the room along with my soft moans and whimpers of pleasure. When I tried to struggle, he captured my wrists in his large hand and pinned them above my head with ease. Stay still, that I'll take you on a trip to heaven. Ace whispered as his light brown eyes captured mine. His lips returned to the side of my neck and this time he licked me there. The hot wetness of his tongue sliding up and down the length of my neck made my body tremble and shiver all over. He groaned softly right into my ear and the sound of his lust turned me on even more. To be continued. Chapter 59. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 59. Drowning in desire, I moaned when he slipped his tongue into my ear and began licking it. Lewd wet sounds echoed loudly in my ear while his hands started roving along my body. Aw! I moaned even louder at the sensation of his large manly hand on my breasts. Ace groped my breasts and massaged them over my clothes as he continued to lick and suck on my earlobe. I quickly felt my legs going weak at his passionate attack. By that time, I had lost myself in my own desires and had forgot all about struggling against him. It was amazing how he could seduce me so easily like this, and I found myself giving in to him without any restraints. Ace sat up and looked down at me as I struggled to catch my breath. His hands were on the button at the front of my white shirt as he began unbuttoning them without any rush at all. His eyes watched me before he smiled at me. His smile looked so sexy, and I felt myself drawn to his smile. Ace bent down above me before he fitted his lips to mine. His lips crushed down quite roughly on mine before his tongue probed my lips opened. I moaned into his mouth after he thrusted his tongue firmly deep into my mouth. His taste filled my mouth as his tongue grinded hungrily against mine. I closed my eyes in bliss as I began kissing him back with urgency. His hands caressed my breasts before I felt him peeling my shirt away from my chest. Ace broke our kiss so that he could stare down at my breasts as his hands peeled away the cups of my bra. He took in a sharp breath at the sight of my naked breasts, and I knew that he liked what he was seeing. Ace caressed my breasts playfully with his fingers before his large palms cupped them. I cried out when his manly hands squeezed my breasts a little roughly. It felt so good. I glanced down to watch his hands on my soft womanly flesh. The stimulation of his hands made my nipples stand up and harden. My breathing came in short bursts as I panted from the heat that was quickly building up inside of me. My lower abdomen throbbed with heat as desire swirled in my tummy. Ace captured the peaks of my breasts in between his fingertips. I cried out when he began rolling my nipples in between his fingertips. Then he tugged on them roughly, making me scream at the intense pleasure coursing through my body from the tips of my erect nipple. Your breasts are so beautiful, Rena. They're so soft, but your nipples are so hard. Ace whispered lustily with his eyes on my breasts as his hands continued to toy with my hardened nipples. As if he could tell from my reaction that I was enjoying his attention, his fingers pinched my nipples faster and harder while I cried out in ecstasy and shook my head from side to side. Ace. I cried out his name before all I could do was moan. My body felt like it was in heat and the burning ache in my lower abdomen quickly melted as hot wetness that seeped out from the wet slit in between my thighs. My pussy throbbed with a need that I knew that only Ace could fulfill. The pleasure that he gave me further intensified when he dipped his head down towards my chest. I felt a hot and wet sensation engulf my nipple and realized that Ace had begun sucking and teasing on my nipple with his skillful mouth and tongue. It tastes good too, Ace said before my nipple disappeared into his mouth again. The tip of his tongue lapped at my hardened peak while my body squirmed beneath him. Lust and desire clouded my brain as I whimpered his name repeatedly as if I was begging him for more pleasure. I wanted to feel him touch me more. I felt another rush of hot wetness gush out from between my legs as my pussy clenched and quivered with desperate need. Ace finally let go out my nipple. His eyes locked with mine as his hands slowly traveled down my body. His hands tugged up my skirt to reveal my thighs as he bit his lower lip in such a sexy way that swayed my heart. Lift your hips, that's it. Spread your legs for me, Rena, Ace urged in a voice so warm and gentle that it made me feel like I was under his spell. After pulling up my skirt to expose my lower body to him, Ace's hands began caressing my thighs. His touch felt amazing on my bare skin. My body trembled in anticipation as his hands caressed their way up my inner thighs. Ace. I whimpered his name. My voice sounded full of yearning as if I couldn't wait for him to have his way with me. I moaned softly when his hands finally cupped the mold of my pussy through my panties. Heat rushed to my face when I realized that I must have soaked my panties all the way with my love juices. I was so turned on at that point that my pussy was flooded with my love honey, and I was certain that Ace could feel the wet heat of my desire against the palm of his hand as well. You get wet very fast, Ace said with a small laugh after he took in a sharp breath. His hand pressed up against my wet opening through the thin fabric of my panties and I cried out. My hips began thrusting upwards against his hand, as I offered him my pussy. I wanted him to touch me there so badly that I wanted to cry out for him to quickly touch me. My body clearly remembered the pleasure of his touch when he made me come so hard in his office. Ace hooked a finger under the waistband of my panties before slowly pulling the unnecessary garment down my legs. His eyes locked with mine and I found myself staring back at him as I bit my lower lip and moaned seductively. It wasn't long before my panties were completely removed from my legs and Ace's hands were parting my thighs firmly wide open. To be continued. Chapter 60. You are listening at novelfull.audio. 60. A glimpse of heaven, ah. I moaned as I felt my pussy opening being stretched open. Ace bent my legs and spread them widely apart. Unlike when we were in his office, he could see everything in this position as he sat in between my legs. Suddenly, a huge wave of embarrassment overcame me, and I couldn't take it anymore. Please don't look. I cried out at the same time that I reached my hands down to cover my pussy to shield it from his intense gaze. Why? Your pussy is so attractive. Let me see it, Rena. Ace coaxed as his hand gently started peeling my hand away from my love opening. No please, it's so embarrassing. I pleaded in a small voice. There's nothing to be embarrassed about. I know, what about I show you my cock? Will that make you feel less embarrassed? Ace suggested with a playful smile. His cock. I blushed a deeper shade of red as my face became unbearably hot. Now that he had said it, I couldn't stop myself from picturing his cock and how massive it must be. This is not good, now I'm yearning for his cock more than anything. No please, I pleaded again. You don't want to see it. I'm always told that my size is very impressive by the ladies. Ace said with a small laugh. I knew that he was teasing me, and he seemed to be enjoying himself so much at my expense. His hand pulled my hands away from my pussy and soon my hands were replaced by his. A lustful moan of pleasure escaped my lips as I threw my head back and enjoyed the sensation of his fingers running up and down the length of my flooded slit. You're flooded down here, Rena, Ace teased as he stroked his fingers along my pussy folds faster. The way he said my name turned me on so much more than he would ever know. My pussy clenched greedily as he continued to stroke me there. When his fingers brushed slightly against my sensitive little nub, I cried out like I was possessed. Ace applied more pleasure as his fingertips swirled around my clit faster and faster while I moaned louder than before. You taste so sweet. Ace said. I watched as Ace seductively licked my juices from his fingers before his fingers disappeared into his mouth. He sucked on his fingers as he stared deeply into my eyes. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Ace is eating my juices. I need more, Ace groaned. He gripped my thighs with his hand and parted them further apart before he buried his face in between my legs. I screamed when I felt his tongue on my clit. He flicked my sensitive nub with the tip of his tongue and I gripped his hair tightly in my hands as ecstasy flooded my body in endless waves. Just when I thought that things couldn't heat up any more than this, I felt a sudden piercing sensation in my love tunnel. Ace. Ah. Ah. I screamed as my hips bucked upwards. Ace had thrusted his fingers into my hole while his tongue continued to pleasure my swollen clit. I pulled on his hair as a way for me to deal with the lust and pleasure that he was making me feel. His thick and long fingers stretched and filled my hole before he began moving them in and out of my hole. The powerful thrusts of his fingers deep inside of my hole felt so good and it made feel like I was about to lose my mind. Please, Ace, I pleaded in a choked-up voice. I wasn't sure if I was begging for him to stop or for him to finger me faster. The double pleasure from him sucking on my clit and fingering my hole was almost too much for me to handle. I'm going to come. He's going to make me come very, very soon. I closed my eyes as my body writhed, thrusting my hips up and down towards his hand and face. Loud wet lewd sounds echoed in the room along with my cries of pleasure as his fingers delved in and out of my wet hole. My insides got stirred up by his fingers fast and hard as he screwed his fingers faster and harder into me. When his fingers curled up and felt along the upper walls of my pussy, I knew that he would soon find my pleasure spot. That I cried out his name loudly when his fingers began thrusting against my G-spot. Ace sucked on my clit harder, and I felt my entire body unraveling at his lewd stimulations. My pussy got wetter as my pussy walls clenched tightly around his fingers. I'm not going to. I whimpered as I felt my orgasm fast approaching. After a few hard and rough strokes of his fingers inside of my love hole, I climaxed spectacularly. I cried out Ace's name as my body spasmed uncontrollably from the pure bliss of my orgasm. I've never felt this good before and we haven't even gone all the way yet. While I lay there trying to catch my breath, Ace slowly slid his fingers out of me and then I felt his weight close to me. Slowly, I opened my eyes to see his hazel brown eyes watching me closely as he leaned his head in his hand. He watched me with a smug smile on his face and I started to blush from embarrassment. My throat had already started to hurt, a great reminder of how loud he made me scream in my ecstasy. Did you catch a glimpse of heaven? Ace asked mockingly as he whispered in my ear. I felt my face burn hotter at his words, but I did end up nodding my head a little in response to his question. Grab your things and come to my office, I'll help you out with your work. Ace said as he shrugged on his suit. My eyes widened in surprise. Ace is going to help me. To be continued.